Welcome back to the second episode of Heated. First, we did Manchester United. Now we are talking Arsenal. Lots of big discussion points with the North London derby on the horizon. An injury crisis has hit the Emirates Stadium. Plus, we're discussing the long-term future of Mikel Arteta, whose contract is running down. A brilliant panel for you tonight with Giuseppe, Sulz, new Dyer with a bald head. We've got man like Brandon. We've got Saad, Egal, and Nathan all on the show with us tonight. Viewers, make sure like buttons have been hit. Make sure you are subscribing to the Football Terrace as well. Get that done. But evening, gentlemen. How are you all?
Yeah, good. As good as an Arsenal fan can be right now. We've had a rough couple of weeks.
I feel like there's a lot of fear-mongering going on, but I'm happy.
Yes, it's a madness. It's a madness right now, bro. It's a madness. You know what I mean? I'm just pray we get through every day, man. Pray we get through every day. Do you know what I mean? That's all I'm saying, bro, right now, man. We're gonna get into it, bro, because there's a lot to discuss.
Can I just first of all, when someone says no Spurs fan, no, it's a show called Heated about Arsenal. Arsenal topics, the same as the last one was Man United. On Friday we're doing Chelsea, and over the course of the season we'll do a number on each club. So no, this isn't a preview for the game, my friend. I'm going to say this as a Man United fan. When it comes to your problems, you've got first world problems as far as I'm concerned. You have got it's your problems are like, I'm worried about paying the gas and electric bills because the kids are going to go cold. You lot are worried about, can I afford to heat the swimming pool or not? That's what I'm talking about problem-wise here. But we're going to start with the injury crisis, I think. I think that's where we need to start because we saw the injury to Odegaard. It could be anywhere from 3 weeks to 2 months that he is out, but he probably won't kick a ball between now and the next international break. Moreno's out. Jesus is out. There's no real timescale yet for Calafiori. I bet you're all waiting with bated breath for the press conference. But the injury crisis has happened, and I want to go to Gal first because you said it in the intro that there seems to be a lot of scaremongering, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration out there right now. People writing the season off, people saying, I knew this would happen. Talk to me. How bad is this injury crisis, and why is there such almost such a panic amongst many Arsenal fans?
Okay. So first thing is, we already know Mikel Moreno hasn't integrated into the Arsenal team, and he was already injured, right? So that's one of the injuries that everyone's talking about. Tomiyasu, we have cover for him. Jesus is back. Declan Rice is only going to miss one game. The way some people are speaking, you would think he's going to miss the City game and the next couple games. He's only going to miss one game. And Tottenham away, let's be honest, we played last year. We played quite pragmatic. We hit them on the counter. It wasn't a game where we had a lot of the ball, in my opinion, in the first place. And we could somewhat manage to beat, and I still think we could beat Tottenham with the players that we have to our availability. I think if you guys rate this team to be a title challenging team and as good as we say we are, one player getting injured, although how important Martin Odegaard is, being the captain and one of our better players, being injured, should not let the whole house of cards fall. You need to understand there's going to be injuries. Injuries are part of football. We can't sit here and have one injury and throw all our toys out the pram and say the season's over, right off the season, the game is done. Of course, you can be disappointed. Of course, you can say to yourself, it's going to be tough. Of course, you can feel down for a moment. But you need to pick yourself back up and say, if we say we're good as we really are, going away to Tottenham without three midfielders, we should find other ways to win. We have a strong defense, one of the best defenses in the league, and we should lean on that defense. Our attack might not be the best attack, but one thing we do have, we have Saka who can get on the counter. We have Martinelli who can get on the counter, and we can find other ways of playing. And also, some of you guys might not rate the manager, but to the people who do rate the manager, you guys are the ones that should know out of all that Mikel Arteta will find a solution and can find a solution in these kind of situations. We still have a decent squad. We still have guys like Thomas Partey, who was considered one of the best defensive midfielders just 2 years ago before we signed Declan Rice, and still is a quality player. We have guys like Jorginho. We have guys like Kai Havertz who can fill in many different positions. And with the quality of players we still have, I still believe in this team. The spine is still there. Maybe Declan Rice is out, but just replace Declan Rice with Partey and you still have a good spine of a team. We're no longer in 2020 where one player falls out and we're absolutely finished. So have some faith, believe in the team, and yeah, we'll have to talk about selections because that's going to be the next key part.
Yeah, and we'll get onto the games and how you perform in them later. I think it's later in the show. When it comes to this, Brandon, is this an injury crisis, or is that being over-egged?
Is it an injury crisis? Probably not. I mean, it depends how you look at it, Tel. I always revert back to the transfer window. You know, did Arsenal do enough? No, we didn't. No, we didn't. Nobody can sit there and tell me that Arsenal did enough in this transfer window. At the end of the day, this is phase 5 of the 5-phase project, and that is the transfer window that Arsenal served up to us. And look at us, you know, we're all sat here, to-ing and fro-ing. Oh, what we're going to do about replacing Odegaard, Mikel Merino, you know, new player just come in. He's already out injured. Calafiori could be out injured as well. So basically, 3 injuries have pretty much decimated our squad because the squad is thin and we haven't done enough in the transfer market. And I said that after the transfer market closed. You know, it's just ironic, really, how, you know, one of the players that I said that Arsenal needed to try and find competition for was Martin Odegaard, because if Martin Odegaard gets injured, not only is he Arsenal's only creative player, but he's also the key piece to Arsenal's press. He's the one who presses from the front. So him not being there is also a big problem when you look at the way that Arsenal press as well, because Martin Odegaard is the front man of that. He's the leader, you know. So whoever comes in now has to do that same role. They have to do that same role. Again, you know, I don't totally disagree with what Igal said. We do have to find a different way of winning. I do still believe that we've got enough to go and beat Tottenham. However, it's a very sticky situation we find ourselves in because we dropped points against Brighton. If we lose against Tottenham and lose against Manchester City, which isn't inconceivable, then we could go into the next international break 8 points behind them already. And we're only 5 games in. That is how thin the margins are, right? So I understand we've got players that can occupy multiple positions. Kai Havertz should not be in the midfield. You know, at the end of the day, he's been doing a job as the number 9. I think he should remain there. And Mikel Arteta has to find a solution to this problem. But the fact and reality is we didn't do enough in this transfer market, and that's it. You know, £20 million net spend. By the time you take into consideration the players that we let go and the players that we brought in, that is the transfer window that Arsenal served up. That, to me, stinks of a lack of ambition. That, to me, stinks of Arsenal are happy being a Champions League club, and that is it. And that stems from the owners. I don't believe it stems from the manager. I know we're going to talk about his contract situation in a little while, but, you know, I really, truly think that the owners and the hierarchy let Mikel Arteta down in this transfer window. And that's how I feel about it.
I want to throw this to Dio. With two sort of differing views there. There are a lot of Gunners online that believe the squad is too thin and a couple of injuries, and it's exposed how bad the squad is. Do you echo that view?
Personally, no, I don't. I don't echo the view that the squad is what the window closes. We have 1 red card, 2 injuries, right? In any team, when you have that kind of thing, you're going to except your Chelsea with 52 players, you know, or 500 players, whatever it is, you know, any other team will suffer the same type of, you know, setback. Any other team. If you go into, so you tell me right now, if 3 players are out for City, if Rodri,
City have had that situation.
But then they found a way to win. So this is where, if you want to be counted as one of the best teams, this is where you have to find a way to use your squad to its strength and win. So I don't echo the sentiments of, the squad is thin. It's about every game. Now, the idea that because we don't have Odegaard, we have to still play like the way we would have played if we had Odegaard is jokes. We can play to the strength of the other players we bring in a different way to win. That's what you do as a manager. You don't say, okay, because Odegaard starts my press, I'm sure they have a plan B. If Odegaard is not in the team, they're like, okay, this is the person who starts the press. If you're not on the team, this is who starts the press. If you're not on the team, this is who starts the press. It doesn't have to be the Odegaard replacement position that starts the press. it can be started from another way. The idea that we shoehorn our team and just have that one mentality of if they don't play that way, we're not going to win is jokes. This is a game of formation, right? This is a game where we can play to our strength. Our defense is still very good. Yes, we're lacking creativity in midfield. And I've said this about the Odegaard thing. Get Odegaard the backup. I hear you, Brandon. But what player plays as good as Odegaard that you can get as a backup? Because if you get somebody who's just narrowly as good as Odegaard, they're not going to want to be backup. They're going to want to go play somewhere else and be on the first team. If you get somebody who's as good as Odegaard 1-to-1, I'm saying you can get a different type of 10.
Do they have to be good enough, or do they just...
No, but I'm saying you can get a different profile of 10. So you can play a different way when Odegaard is out. So for example, on the left wing, we have Martinelli with the speed and the driving a player, and then you have Leandro Trossard, more technical, slower, and play the different way. Those are two types of 11s that we have, right? It's two different profiles. They both push. We can play in different ways. So it doesn't have to be like for like is what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying about the Odegaard position. It doesn't have to be a like for like, somebody who creates just like Odegaard. It can be a different type of 10 that we can get in that position. So we can play a different way. So yeah, so I don't echo that at all.
I hear that point. I'll come to you in a second, Brandon. Just hold that thought for us. Giuseppe, look, people that don't rate Arteta, people that don't rate this squad, people that don't rate Arsenal, whether they're rivals or Arsenal fans, this is catnip to them because this is their opportunity to say, you know, I told you I was right. Do you think people are maybe getting a little bit, though? And the side I'm most shocked with, though, are the side that are, we can win the league. You know you're going to have injury problems in the season because everybody does. The people I'm most shocked by are the Arsenal fans are like, that's it. Season's over. I can't believe this. Oh, my God, we're in so much trouble. How have you gone from being title contenders or winning the league to having a couple of players missing? By the way, when you look at the next 4 or 5 games, take out Man City away, which, by the way, you never win at, even with your best team. You've got Spurs, who you've still got a better team than when you've got all the injuries. And then I swear you play Leicester, Southampton, and Bournemouth. Why the panic, Giuseppe?
Do you know what? Like, I do think the panic's a bit far-fetched. I think some Arsenal fans are just a bit. I think because we drew with Brighton, and then it's all been like one thing after another thing after another thing. It's caused like a mass panic, like people forgetting Rice is only out for the one game, etc. And I think it's the magnitude of games. Our next 2 games, you could argue that it's Arsenal's 2 biggest away games of the season. You could throw Anfield in there, but Spurs away and City away are the 2 ones where we're like we want to win them games. Even though we never beat City after drawing last season, a lot of Arsenal fans have thought this is the year that we go there and win. Now we've got a spanner in the works of that. But for me, the panic can't be over the top. Obviously, now you're sitting on a fence, a very thin fence, because now 1 injury, 2 injuries, now that becomes a real problem. Right now, it ain't the end of the world. Like, once again, Odegaard might not play against Spurs. That's all right. We could sit back against Spurs, hit them on the counter. That's why I actually believe that in some ways, the Sterling signing hasn't been too bad on the loan signing, because I think if we play that sort of football, counter-attacking, it will fit having him in the team compared to like who we've had. So I think the Spurs game, I still expect us to beat Spurs. I'll be honest. I think with these injuries or not, hopefully, you never know. The thing is, we are all sitting back and we're sort of panicking because we know how much we want the league, right? It can go one or 2 ways, right? We could fall apart here and we could be like, oh my God, no, da-da-da. But if Arteta and Arsenal get through these next few games with decent points and playing still good, it swings the pendulum in the other way. For example, you get 4 points, right? The way our team is right now, we get 4 points against City and Spurs. All of a sudden, Arsenal fans are like, 1 minute, we've had these injuries. Odegaard's out. We've got 4 points. The panic will switch. We can hope. You never know what's going to happen. Arteta might have a plan. You might have a Nwaneri come through and just light it up. There's things that can happen. Obviously, we can't rely on youngsters. We can't, but sometimes this sort of thing needs to happen for sometimes someone to come in and be able to progress. I think the transfer window weren't enough, and I think that's why the panic. I think that's another reason why the panic, because before the season started, we were sitting here and I was arguing with Dio about it, and I said, our squad is thin. Our squad's thin. We've got rid of players. I think we got rid of too many players and not brought enough in. And me and Dio were going back and forth. Dio was like, but you're saying if there's injuries, well, now we're sitting here and there are injuries, you know? So now we're sitting here and saying, hold on, we were already thinking it could be a problem. Now it might actually be a problem. But once again, I'm still sitting there calm. I'm the Odegaard one really pissed me off when it happens on international. It really annoys me. The Moreno thing was unlucky. I think it's a bit of we've been a bit unlucky as well, to be honest. The way the injuries have happened, not for happening for us. Calafiori not happening for us. Training for Moreno after he's just signed. So I think we have to just relax a bit, Arsenal fans. We need to see the games first. The Brighton result, yeah, which I think the ref decided in the end of the day with that shocking decision, although we should have still won the game, the decision was shocking. We will sit there now and say, we can't, like what Brandon said, if you lose these 2 games, all of a sudden you're 8 points behind City. That's why Arsenal fans are panicking, because they're like, bro, we could actually lose the league in the next 2 games. Not that 8 points are unattainable through the rest of the season, because the games with the next 2 games are arguably 2 of our harder games of the season, but you don't really want to do that. Definitely this. We win. I think we beat Spurs and it will be a lot calmer from the fan base. But once again, Arsenal last season against Spurs, when we played them away, we technically didn't really have a different team to what we have now. We had Odegaard and that's it. Like Rice played, but we didn't have Partey. So it's like, I'm sure we didn't have Partey, or I might be wrong actually. But regardless, we can still beat them. We can.
It's a pretty good guess that he didn't have Partey last season. You missed him. You're pretty much going to be right. I get where you're coming from. I want to go to Sulz for a minute here. There are also some Arsenal fans that are saying, "Look, we told you the squad was weak. You've seen the result against Brighton. It's nothing to do with the referee," and they are painting the picture that the next 2 to 3, the next 7 games over the following month are really going to expose the frailties of the squad, the manager, and everybody else. How right do you think that sector of Arsenal fans are?
We don't believe what we say. We just say what we want to say just for the clicks and views. Because as soon as any adversity comes into the picture, we're panicking. Why are we panicking? I'm calm. I'm so chill. Because if this is the plan the club wants to go with, then we've got to believe in that plan. If this is what Edu and Arteta and the board have decided to do, then die on your sword, climb that hill and make it happen. Because it's not up to me. I didn't say to you, go get your 2 number 10s and get them to piss off. I didn't say that to you. Did the £35 million get directed to my bank account? No. So if you decided you did not want to replace them, then die on that hill. You better, and this is me directing this at Arteta, I'm one of his biggest backers, you better play that 17-year-old. Because if that's the hill you decided to go on and authorize Fabio Vieira to be loaned out, authorize the sale of ESR and decided, actually, we're not going to bring a 10 in and I'm going to promote the 17-year-old because I think he's Lamine Yamal from Barcelona, then go and prove it. Because this is your time to stand up. This isn't about a thin squad anymore. No excuses after 4 seasons. And the only thing I'm going to say, right, is Edu has got to go. He has again and time again shown his incompetencies. And he is the first thing that needs to go. Bring Pep Guardiola in. If he has to work with Edu, I'm telling you, this bald man is going to expose him. He is going to cook him in his own barbecue. I'm telling you now, it's not going to happen. He's going to come out and say, what is this Edu guy? And you're expecting me to believe this is an elite club when this guy can't even speak to players. He wants to keep pally-pally with clubs and rather than actually go and sign people. We should have gone to Real Sociedad and said, we want to take this guy for 25 million. He's on his final year of his contract. You're either going to give us or we're going to come back next season. We're going to take him for free. How about that one? Because we need to stop with this pally stuff. We're an elite football club. We do what we want to do. If they, like I said, if Moreno, Rice and Odegaard is all it takes for us to think we're not going to beat Spurs, we're not going to beat City, then how much did we really believe we were going to win the league? Do you really believe in the manager? Do you really believe in the board? Because the answer is no. Because if it takes 2 games for your entire process to change, then I don't believe what you're saying. And this is the problem with Arsenal fans time and time again. Bring a Man City fan and tell him Rodri and KDB are injured and watch how they respond. Do you know what they're going to say? Bring it. Because we're still going to win this damn league. Whereas with Arsenal fans, nah, we ain't going to win anything anymore. Just get this all gone. Oh my God. It's like, no. If we're title contenders and we want to beat City as a fan base, you've got to believe it. And you've got to ride it out. It's like the Smiler and Alton Towers fan. We're going through the loops right now. And we've got to keep going. And this is the ride I'm here for. I love it. I'm absolutely loving this ride because at the end of it, right? It's going to be stressful. We knew that going into the season. So I'm here for it, man. Let's go. Arteta, make your money, make your authority, and change the opinions of the footballing world that you're an elite generational coach. Because this is your time to prove that when you've got adversity against you.
You can't compare us to City Souls, though, because City fans will do that because they've been there and they've won the league multiple times recently. That's why they come with that confidence. If they hadn't won the league for the past 4 years...
So you don't believe what you're saying then?
No. I'm not saying me, but I'm saying that's why Arsenal fans are starting to panic a bit because they're saying, like, we've lost 2 in the North London derby. We're going in with 2 of our the 2 main midfielders, the 2 midfielders that you argue would be the first names on the team sheet, not playing. The one that's still there is the one that you'd maybe change for Moreno, which is also not available. So 3 of our midfielders, arguably, maybe the 3 main midfielders that we're going to end up playing this season ain't there. That's why they're panicking. But once again, I agree with you.
Rodri and KDB were out. Did they panic? No. Rodri's been out the whole season so far. Are they panicking? No.
Would you not say that's because we believe in their squad? Because would you not say that's because we believe in our squad or because they believe in their squad? Because like
we don't believe in jack shit that any of this club does as soon as adversity hits. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, but what I mean is from the end of the window, there was a lot of apprehension around our depth, right? So like last season, we were talking about Saka depth and how we needed somebody on the wing. And then we've got rid of all the Martin Odegaard depth in terms of Emil Smith-Rowe. Not to say that I believed in Emil Smith-Rowe or Fabio Vieira because they hadn't really performed when we needed them or they had injury issues. But we've then got rid of them and we brought in a 17-year-old kid. And that's where the questions stem from. When City dropped Rodri and Gundogan are not there, they've still got experienced players in that midfield, right? They still got Prem-proven players. They've still got the likes of Kovacic, Mateo Nunes, Bernardo Silva. They've got proven players.
Rico Lewis, Oscar Bob. You know, they're Prem.
Well, yeah. Again, but then the difference is, right, Dio, is you're talking about young kids in the midst of a group of established players. We're talking about
one young kid in the midst in Arsenal, in the midst of also players who have played together for the last 2-3 seasons. So the question, what you're saying is the exact same thing, is just on a different team. Ethan Nwaneri is the only young kid, and Miles and Lewis Kelly are the only 2 young kids that we have on our roster for this season. Everybody else on the roster is an experienced player in the Prem. So it's the same thing with having Rico Lewis and Oscar Bob in City with experienced players. The difference is those players have won something, so the mentality will be different. Now, I get that, but Arsenal fans are the most finicky fan base ever. If you say in one breath, we're good enough to challenge and win the title, injuries should not be your excuse. If you have to park the bus and score 1 goal and get your 3 points and move on as a championship team, we've seen City do it. When City didn't have their best players, when Haaland wasn't scoring, when Rodri had a red card, when De Bruyne was injured, they found in that first period, they drew 1 game, they lost 2. That's where they drew to us. They drew to us, and I think, no, they lost 2 and drew 1 to us or something random in that window when they didn't have their best players. And before they even got the full squad back together, they found a way to start winning again. You know, so the point... So the point is,
because what you're talking about is Rico Lewis comes in and he's not the second, not necessarily the second choice. He's not the second choice player, right? We're talking Oscar Bob again. He's not the next in line. They have Savio. They have all these other players that come before them. The pressure doesn't fall on a 17-year-old kid. If they lose KDB, it's not a 17-year-old Phil Foden that's coming in for KDB, right? Back even when they had Phil Foden, look at the way in which they managed him. They never had him come in and hold that mantle. And they bled him into that team slowly. They had David Silva.
I totally understand that. I was only addressing what you said when you said those players have experienced players around them. No, I said the same thing for Ethan. The players around him are experienced, is what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the hierarchy. Now, the hierarchy is a totally different, like who comes in second after you're injured, totally different conversation. I'm not going to argue about that. You're right. We have a 17-year-old backing Martin Odegaard up. But we're the same fan base who complained about, oh, there's no route for the youth academy players to make it to the first team. That's why a lot of them are leaving. We're the same people who lamented and cried and said, oh, we got rid of Chido, Martin Obi. Manchester United has got him now, a good scoring kid. We're the same fan base who cried and shouted about Patino. Oh, we're selling Charlie Patino, blah, 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 blah. We need to bring him back. Oh, what's this guy's name we sent to France and we sold for 40 million. We're the same fan base. And now that we're actually giving 2 young team academy players a chance to find a pathway to the first team, all of a sudden, because we now have injuries, there's a panic in the Arsenal base, and that's why I said Arsenal fans are finicky. There's a panic that all of a sudden they've forgotten about asking to play these kids. They've forgotten how talented.
You know, Terry, this comes back to the argument me and Brendan had after we lost to City a couple of years ago. Some people never believe in the first place; they're faking it.
Well, but this is the thing. So I've seen some stuff that some clips of Northside the last day or so, the Barney the Bear stuff and that. I've been cracking up laughing. I understand Arsenal fans that didn't believe in the first place, showing their frustration of this is what we said would happen. Look what's now happening. What I don't understand are Arsenal fans, not Dio that still believes, not Sulz who still believes, but it's the Arsenal fans who have said, I think we can win it this year. A couple of injuries and a bit of adversity. It's done. It's over. I look at those gooners and think, why have you spent all summer, the last year, 2 years lying? There's nothing I've said about Arsenal in the last 2 years that I don't stand by. And the only thing I really got wrong is when I changed my mind halfway through 2 seasons ago and said, I think you thought you'd go on to win the league when you're 8 points clear. Outside of that, like this year, I haven't predicted you to win the league. I think you'll come second. Moments like this are why. Because I just think all the teams are going to go through some injury crisis and some players will get suspended. But I just think City will have enough over Liverpool and Arsenal to get over the line again. But that's not even a diss towards Arsenal. Brandon, sorry, you've been waiting patiently, mate. Go on. And then I'm going to go to Saad.
I wanted to say, there's a section of the fan base that, like you just explained there, Terry, said during the summer, we can win the league. All of a sudden, bit of adversity, few injuries. Now it's panic stations, right? And none of these guys on here, are in the panic station side of things. So, they're clearly the other end of the spectrum where they actually do genuinely believe. Me, not so much. And I've made that clear over the 4 years that Mikel Arteta has been in charge anyway. So, there's a certain section of the fan base that I think they sit there and say they do believe and, they do all of that. But then, like you say, when the adversity comes along, they show their true feelings, which is that they don't believe, at least with these guys, they truly, genuinely believe. And that's fair enough. What I hate the most about some Arsenal fans, not all Arsenal fans, is when they sit there and go, oh yeah, I believe. And then all of a sudden, a few things go wrong and they don't believe. At least I can sit here and say, I haven't believed, and I still don't believe that we're going to win the league. And I haven't done for the past 4 years. At least I don't blow one way when the wind blows that way and then that way, and the same with these guys. So, respect to them for that. But I just wanted to come back to, because there's a couple of points I wanted to pick up on. Deo, with the whole Odegaard situation, I understand that you're not going to bring in another player who's as quality as what Martin Odegaard is and can offer exactly the same thing. However, at the same time, don't let go of Fabio Vieira and don't let go of ESR if you're not going to replace them. Because we have left ourselves in a situation now where a lot of us expect Arsenal to challenge for a league title again. A lot of us, I expect Arteta and Arsenal to win a trophy this season at the very, very least. And we have left ourselves in a situation where we could potentially be relying on a 17-year-old kid who looks decent, don't get me wrong, but we've seen him in a few pre-season games. We've seen him in a few games. Premier League.
Not everybody's Manu where they can come into a midfield and win a trophy in their first season. I agree, bro.
Yeah.
And Brandon, let me
just say this though. The revisionist history for Fabio Vieira needs to stop. It needs to stop. Fabio Vieira was either injured or when he was given an opportunity, did not really perform that well outside of a little bit early in the beginning of last season.
Impact.
If you guys don't know, Fabio Vieira today, as of today, in Porto, is injured. So even if we wanted him here, the guy is just as bad injury.
Like I understand what Brandon is saying. Brandon is saying since we got rid of him and we got rid of Elmas Miro, we should have gotten a backup. But I also wanted to just rebuttal with this, Brandon. I hear you on that, but you also look at Arsenal over the last 2-3 seasons. 2 seasons ago, 22-23, we were playing gun-ho football, inverted with Zinchenko, and we played a certain style with Granit Xhaka, and we looked a different way. Last season, we played more controlling football, more pragmatic. We were more pragmatic with the ball. We held the ball differently. We didn't play the same exact way, right? This season, maybe Arteta did not get a backup for Odegaard. That's why he probably went and got Timber's back, got a Calafiori, got a Marino, who's a dual winning machine as well. Maybe he's planning to change the way we play. It's not going to be through Odegaard being that guy who creates anymore. It's going to be more like the Atletico Madrid type style where we dominate the ball defensively and hit them on the counter. So maybe that's what we're looking at. And that's why he didn't get a backup. But fans are used to how we already play. And because they're used to it and they like it, they think that we must play that same way every season. All I'm saying is,
our argument is actually to say that's not the argument we're putting forth. The argument we're putting forth is even if you want to bring in a different profile of 8, right? You bring in a different profile. We're not asking for an identical player to Martin.
But that's what I'm saying though.
I'm saying is, but if we let go of Emil Smith Rowe and we let go of Fabio Vieira, we could have still brought in a player. Doesn't have to be an Odegaard.
But the fact that he's trusting, right? The fact that they trusted Ethan Nwaneri, that's why I said maybe they have a plan of how they want to play this season with Ethan's profile being the backup to Martin Odegaard. That's all I'm saying. And you might listen, and you may not have seen it in action, and that's why we're really panicking because we haven't seen it in action yet. But you never hold on. If
can I come in because I haven't even said nothing.
I just want to say real quick. If we go there on Sunday, right, with Ethan Nwaneri, and Ethan, let's just assume we go there with Ethan Nwaneri on Sunday. He gives an assist and scores a goal, and the team wins. We win 2-0. We get out of there, right? Are we going to sit here and say what they plan to do was not going to work? We don't know yet. We don't know yet. So that's all I'm saying. Yeah, I just know that the team has changed over the last couple of seasons. And
let me just go to
they want to play.
Let's just jump to Saad for a minute because Saad's been waiting very patiently. Now my dog has knocked the plate over. Saad, over to you, mate. Saad, go on.
Yeah, listen, I definitely think there's been a bit of a... Listen, I can't lie, for a hot second, as soon as I heard, I was streaming live when the news broke about Odegaard, yeah? So I panicked, I can't lie. I was like, bro, season's over, we're cooked, for like a hot second. And I think after like 5-10 minutes, I was like, I got back down to earth, and I was like, yeah, it's not really that bad. The thing is, the only game that we're really missing Rice for is the Tottenham game. That's the only game that we're missing Rice for. And to be honest, I think we can make do without him, and we can still give them a very good game, even without Rice and Odegaard. Now, Odegaard was, I don't know if everybody remembers, Odegaard was missing last season, and I think he missed like 3 or 4, 5, even 5 games, bro.
Newcastle away.
He missed 5 games. Newcastle away, we still created chances. It's just the fact that we couldn't put those chances away. And in the other 4 games, we still created chances, and we created a lot of chances in those games. So it wasn't a massive problem. The only game that I'm really worried about is Manchester City. But the main thing for me in this whole injury crisis that we're in at the moment is, okay, our defense is unscathed, bro. Nobody's been touched from our defense. Do you know what I mean? Everybody's fine. Touch wood. Nothing's happened. Yeah, nothing's happened. Now, our midfield has been a bit dropped down, bro, in levels in regards to Rice and Odegaard missing. As much as everybody's saying Nwaneri is going to be the cover for Odegaard, Nwaneri is not going to be the cover for Odegaard. He's really not going to be the cover for Odegaard. I'll tell you exactly who's going to be the cover for Odegaard. It's going to be Kai Havertz. And Kai Havertz is going to drop into the 10, and he's going to play probably Jesus or Trossard in the striker. That's what he did last season.
Good luck.
So that's what he did last season, and it worked, bro. We still scored goals. We still created goals. Do you know what I mean? When he first played in his first game, which I believe was that Newcastle game, first half he looked a little bit off. But then he started to get into the position. The next game he was connecting passes, linking up with Saka. Yeah, listen, I don't think that this crisis is a mad crisis. If we had lost Saliba, Odegaard, do you know what I mean, Raya, I could
Rice.
understand it's a crisis. It's a
Rice,
crisis.
you know,
Yeah,
if we have to play
it's a-
Neto in goal,
that's a crisis, bro. But I
La-
think
last
right
year
now,
we
you look at
survived. Last year we survived without Partey or Odegaard at the exact same time.
But can
I
ask-
I
Two
don't
ways
think
yeah.
it's as bad as everybody thinks. I know Odegaard's going to be gone for like however many games that he's going to miss, but I still think we can make do without him. Do you know what I mean?
We beat City without Bukayo Saka, man. Why are we panicking? Forget all this panic. We've done it before. We can do it again. We're a big
I just
team,
think-
title
think it's-
challenging. Martin Odegaard is a minor miss. It's an inconvenience, if anything.
I think it's because we're away souls. That's
Who
what it
cares,
is.
man?
it's
Who
not.
cares?
No,
It
I'm
is
sorry.
what it is.
Yeah, I'm just
Saad,
trying to
Saad,
give
Saad,
like context.
I don't think it's because we're away. You know what I think it is? I think it's because these fans genuinely did not believe in the first place. And now that they see a reason to be able to come out and say, look, hey, here's what it is. That's exactly what's going on. These are people who did not believe originally, but they came out and said, oh, yeah, the team looks good. And then one injury, I said it, I told you, I knew it. And that's the point. Like, my thing is, are you telling me that we cannot play a formation against Tottenham with the players that we have right now and do a job? Like, are we looking at this squad and saying the players we have right now, if we wanted to play a defensive game and somehow shoestring our fastest players in our front line, we can't beat a Tottenham that plays a high line on a counter attack? Like, I'm looking at the names on the list and I'm like, it is so possible for us to play a low to mid block, allow them play their high line and hit them on the counter with our fast players. Like, so my point is, like, we can win the game in different ways. It doesn't have to be in the way our first 11 always wins it.
But Dio,
it's about getting 3 points.
Arsenal fans.
But that's what it is. One game at a time, though. Why do you want to look at 10 games?
All right, but listen, right? This season is an unprecedented amount of games with the Champions League fixtures. We're aware of this. We've got a smaller squad than we had last season, right? That's facts, right? So when you factor in injuries, I can understand some fans panicking. And this narrative about, look, I know some people want to believe and whatnot, but football fans are fickle, right? At the beginning of a season, I'm sure Everton have high hope. Everton fans have high hopes of, of enjoying their football, and then the season starts, right?
But
and then
Everton fans, you're right.
So
I don't think they were hoping anything.
Some of us have blind belief, but we have doubts behind it, but we just believe, and then reality kicks in. And they shouldn't be criticized any nonetheless, just because there's some people that are true believers, right? I just think that's the life of football fans. Some are gonna believe and some aren't. But the reality is that for me, I look at it from the perspective of, because of the amount of games that we have, and now we're already short. That's what the problem stems. If you're talking about isolation, the Tottenham game, I don't disagree with you. But then I'm looking at Atlanta, I'm looking at PSG, I'm looking at City, I'm looking at all these other games that you have to. But that's why I said you have to take it game by game, though, because while we're talking about this, right? Okay, fine, great stuff. We find a way to beat Tottenham, and when City play, you hear that De Bruyne and Haaland are injured in that game, and we're going to play them next. Anything happens before that, I'm not worried about that game now. I'm worried about the Tottenham game, and I'm looking at the squad that I have, as thin as you call it, as thin as people call it, and saying to myself, okay, with this squad, how can I play my best football and win against Tottenham? Get my 3 points, and then I can focus on Atalanta, because that's a different team and a different way that they play. Then I can focus on that. Then I can focus on City. If I'm taking everything in shoestrings and tying all the games down, I'm literally just overly.
Can I ask a question? I want to throw this question to Saad to begin with. The new Champions League format. Now, I'm not saying you want to lose. I'm not saying try to lose. But would you rather, with these injuries, rotate and play slightly stronger teams in the Premier League, maybe? Because losing or drawing and dropping some points in the opening couple of Champions League games doesn't appear as though it will be as detrimental towards in relation to getting through to the knockout stages as it once did. Is that something that can help because there's now more games and you don't need to finish top of a group? Or is it a case of you've got to play your strongest team for every Premier League and every Champions League game? How do you personally see it?
Listen, as much as what I've said today, in regards to the whole Kai Havertz thing and missing Martin Odegaard, I wasn't happy. Everybody knows that I wasn't happy with the transfer window and how it ended. Yeah, I didn't rate the fact that we only went and bought Sterling in the attack. I wasn't happy with the people that we brought into the midfield, and I wasn't happy with the lack of cover that we had. Now, in regards to the players that are missing at the moment, obviously we've spoken about them, but in regards to dropping games, I've said this from the start of the season. I don't think we can compete on all fronts. And I've been very vocal about this. I don't think we can. I think right now we can either focus on the 2 cups and then maybe one of the bigger competitions, or we can focus on one of the big competitions and nothing else. Do you know what I mean? So it's either, and even if we focus on those smaller cups and then we focus on one of the big other competitions, that would be stretching the team for me, because I don't feel like we've got enough depth of quality in attacking and midfield areas to really push us.
Simply put, don't you want to win every game?
Of course, I want to win every game. Of course,
okay, so you.
But I don't think we're capable. I know, but I don't think we're no. But that wasn't the question. The question was, would you set up to lose those games and obviously put all your eggs into one basket?
I didn't say set up to lose though. So we got to be. The reason I asked it is this, right? I want to throw this out there. I've said for many years that winning a treble is a harder achievement than going invincible, and a lot of you have alluded to that on this. Balancing loads of games and multiple competitions is harder than focusing on one sole competition. I'm not saying try to lose those games, but this is where I think the top managers earn their money, because you can't, especially with injuries. I asked a question on purpose. When I ask questions, I need to point this out to some of the trolls in the comment section. It's not because that's what I believe per se. I'm playing devil's advocate. However, you are not going to be able to play, even if you didn't have injuries, your strongest team against Spurs, and then against Atalanta, and then against City, and then against Paris Saint-Germain. You were going to have to rotate. Now you've got injuries, you've still got to rotate. You have to rotate still. Otherwise, you will exhaust players, and you then risk further injury. So if you're having to rotate, would you rather play the stronger team in the Champions League or the stronger team in the Premier League? Because you're rotating with 2 or 3 players already out. So I'm just intrigued to know your thoughts on that.
Well, by the way, sorry. People. I messed up that. What I just said before, because I said two focus on the 2 smaller competitions and a big one, or focus on just the big one. I meant focus on the cups or focus on one big competition solely. Is what I meant. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
For me though,
my thing is I want Mikel Arteta to set up the best possible team for every game, accounting for the fact that there's going to be rotation, and use different rotations in different games to try to see which players have the best chemistry in the attack. Because now that we have Raheem Sterling, we have Jesus back, we have Havertz who can play in midfield and in attack. We're going to have so many different options that we're going to have to try to find a way to tinker with the lineup. So use these 3 games to try to prepare yourself and have the best teams going forward. Obviously, you don't want to make too many rotations versus City. You don't want to make too many rotations versus Tottenham. Maybe in the Atlanta game, you can make some rotations in the attack. The center backs, I think you don't want to mess up the Gabriel and Saliba partnership for either of those games. But the fullbacks, like Ben White, could maybe drop out for Timber. I trust them. You could play as Zinchenko in Europe and not play Zinchenko against City and Tottenham. Those kind of rotations, Terry. I'm not saying take out Thomas Partey and throw in Ethan Nwaneri and for the Champions League game. But if we are going to play Ethan Nwaneri, this is probably the time we're going to have to start playing him, because we have a lot of games back to back, and eventually we're going to have to throw this kid in, and he's going to have to sink or swim. He's 17 years old. I know it's dangerous, but the reality is, if we're going to throw him in a game, I'd rather throw him in the game versus Atlanta than I would in the North London derby. I don't know.
I mean, this whole idea he's 17.
Can we stop this? He's 17. Yeah, we need to stop that.
It's such bullshit, man. It's such horseshit.
There's a lot of 17-year-olds in other leagues.
If you're good, you're old enough. We are seeing so many players, right, at the age of 16, 17, 18, come through the ranks, and you either sink or you... Look, if you've not got the mentality to compete and take an opportunity, you were never good enough to play for the elite club.
You would start him versus Tottenham.
Yes, why not? If the club have decided, you know what, we're going to strip our house down and we're just going to keep a 17-year-old, why not? Well, why else did you keep him there? To look pretty? To just like, hey, look at us, we've got a 17-year-old, hey. Like, what else are we doing here?
For
Like,
me,
what
for
is
me,
it? Is it just so he can get that little poster and go, look, I got the youngest player in the Premier League? Why else are we doing? Is it decoration, or can we actually use him? Do we pay wages? Yes, so he legally can play.
He can come on in the second
I
half.
hear that. I want to read out some starting lineups, and I only know this because it's my club, but I'm drawing an example about a team. So if I go back to the group stage of the Champions League in the 07-08 year, where United won the Premier League and Champions League, this was 4 of our starting lineups in the group games. This was against Sporting at home. We started the game with John O'Shea at right back, Cusack in goal. Darren Fletcher and Anderson started in the midfield, not Hargreaves and Scholes. Ronaldo on the right, Nani on the left, Luis Saha started up front, so no Wayne Rooney. When we played Dynamo Zagreb, we started the game. Gerard Piqué started the game as a young kid. Danny Simpson, who won the league with Leicester, started at right back. Carrick and Fletcher in the middle. Nani and Tevez did start that game, to be fair. When we went away to Dynamo Kiev, Brown started. We played Darren. Listen, people act like people haven't been doing this for years. Darren Fletcher started left back that game as an example. John O'Shea played in the central midfield area. We then also played Roma at home later in that tournament. John O'Shea started again at right back. Carrick and Scholes in the middle, but Zaha started up front. Cusack went in goal. The point I'm making is you're going to, when it comes to predicting your season, it has to include rotation. It has to include playing your squad. And if people go, I don't think the squad's good enough, then I don't understand how you're predicting a successful season. For me, I look at Arsenal and think if you don't win a fair amount of your next few games, both in the Champions League, Premier League, and of course, I think what you're playing Bolton in the League Cup, that for me is going to be because your manager hasn't prepared the team properly. I think you've got good enough players to win most of those games. I'm not saying you win the league or Champions League, but I'm looking at the teams you're playing, right? And I just think to myself, you are good enough to win the vast majority of these matches. That's why I don't understand the panic. Not from the people that don't rate you. It makes sense that they're talking about it, right? That, like, I know a lot of people are going to have a go at the league gunners and the North sides, but they never rated you in the first place. So I get why they're saying now we're going to be exposed, because they always thought you were going to be exposed. Fair play to them. But anyone who's backed you, I don't we can't rotate for these Champions League games. All the teams that ever win the Champions League rotate in the group stages, because those teams that win Champions Leagues are typically also trying to win their league title. You can't not. I'm just a bit confused.
Terry, when did you throw Kobe Mainoo in last year?
Sorry?
What game did you throw Kobe Mainoo in?
Liverpool
away.
First, did he start?
Yes.
That was his first start, was Liverpool away in the Prem.
Do you think Arsenal should start Ethan?
Yes.
I absolutely listen. If I agree completely, I think it was Sir Matt Busby that said, "If you're good enough, you're old enough." When he made his debut 2 seasons ago, and the media attacked Arteta, and they said he did it for his ego. Again, Gooners came out and said, "No, he's a proper player. He's going to be a star of the future." 2 years later, especially with the injuries you've got, the fact you've sold, you did, in my opinion. All being said, I don't think you replaced certain players like Fabio Vieira in the transfer market because the club believes in Nwaneri. Now, you've got to test it at some point. Test it now. Test it. I think you test it. There is a difference, I think, if you're bringing in a player with no preseason, who's never played in England, and you're throwing him into the atmosphere. Nwaneri, I know he grew up in England. He's played at the levels. I don't see the issue with giving him a go. And it might not be the Spurs game, but I would say over the next 3 or 4 matches, that kid's got to start some of them. He has to.
Yeah.
He simply has to. I don't see what the issue is. And look, and if you're not good, if your squad isn't good enough and you get exposed, then at least the answers are there.
Tottenham started Sarr, I think, 2 seasons ago when we beat them 2-0, and he was the reason why they lost.
Yeah. For me, personally,
you always beat Tottenham though. So sorry, go on.
For me personally, I would heavily rotate in the Atlanta game. I don't give a crap. Like, people will say, why? Well, it's the first game out of all the Champions League games. It's one of our hardest games, and it's the one where I would say you need to heavily rotate because of the
You
2
saying
games.
no Saka, no Saliba?
I don't see an issue with it, because I look at it like this. This game, is the game that is put in the worst place out of any Champions League game we're going to have, right? Because it's placed in between
Not correct.
Spurs It's
Same
pacing.
thing, same exact thing with Inter as well, bro. The USL has fucked us completely, by the way,
yeah, I hear
with the
it, but
position of these
but
games.
not away at
They're all three of them. You know the away games, yeah. Sorry, Giuseppe. I know you're speaking, yeah. But you know all three games. Obviously, we got Tottenham away, then we got Atalanta away, then we got Man City away. Again, in like a month, we have Newcastle away, then we have Inter away, and then we come back and we have Chelsea away at Stamford
And
Bridge.
before Newcastle,
Exact same thing, bro.
You can't compare. No, but hold on. You cannot compare that game between them two, between away at the North London Derby and away at City.
No, but I'm still saying they're difficult games, bro. Going to St. James's Park is no walk in the park.
Of course.
No pun intended.
But what I'm trying to say is that game, and it's Atlanta, not Inter, right? So that's what I'm saying. This is the game to rotate. That is the one where, because I think even a heavily rotated team can beat Atlanta, right? I still believe that us having it. And when I say heavily rotated, I don't mean like every single player, but I think that you can take Saliba out and put Timber in at centre back, and play left back, and play Ben White right back, and play Zinchenko left back. That and a Gabriel, that's a good enough back four, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can drop Partey and play Jorginho against Atlanta away. You can play Nwaneri against Atlanta away. You can play Sterling and Martinelli as the wingers with Trossard up front. Like, you can play that team, I believe, and still beat them. And if you don't beat them, it's fine. You have another 7 games to win the Champions League. The fact of the matter is, people want to say that we can't rotate, but then that doesn't make sense, because if you watch City in their, let's see how City rotate in their game, because they will also rotate.
I just want
to Nathan, I'll come to you in a second, Nathan. I want to go to Brandon, because Brandon's been covering his face, shaking his head at a lot of this talk about rotating for games. You don't believe you should rotate for the Champions League games, Brandon?
Oh, no. Listen, I believe that Arsenal have to rotate. You're 100% right. We have to rotate. Why? Because we didn't have a strong enough transfer window. And this is it. You know, everybody's talking again about, oh, well, you know, if we lose the first game against Atalanta, it doesn't matter. It fucking does matter, boys. This is phase 5. Arsenal are supposed to be the finished article now. We are supposed to be competing on all fronts. Yeah, taking every game seriously, regardless of rotation or not. Not sitting here going, oh, well, you know, we could play this player, we could shoehorn this player in, knowing that it's all going to end in tears anyway. Do you know what I mean? And that's just the reality of it. This squad, unfortunately, you know, we was this close last season, this close, right? And we didn't go out and show serious ambition in this transfer window. That's the problem. It's not even about the squad as such. It's more down to the fact that the club don't have the ambition. I've explained this on a number of occasions before, right?
You said that over and over and over and over again. So now we're asking, and we're talking about the team that we have now. Hold on. The question is, Brandon, see, look, you can keep going back to the window. You can keep going back to the past. You can keep going back to the no ambition. We've agreed. Okay, fine. You know what? Let me say, if this was to me, I agree with you. They didn't buy enough. They didn't do anything enough. Okay, this is what you have, right? As a team, what do you then do as a team and as a manager? This is what you've been handed to go on and win something. So if you say, here's the thing, if you say what they've done is not good enough, they're not going to win anything, then total write-off, great stuff. Take that position. But then if other people are saying, if other people are saying, well, with what you have, if you still rotate, you still have some quality, and you can still win this game, or you can still win that game this way, and then you say, well, they still didn't do well enough in the window. It doesn't. It's the you can talk about the window, you can talk about the players that they bought, you can talk about the ambition, you can say all of that. Even if we agree with you on all of that, the question now is, as Arsenal is right now, going into this Tottenham game, what can they do with the players they have to win, and then how do they rotate for Atalanta? Because it's going to be a difficult game, and then prepare themselves for City. It's not then to say, oh, okay, well, if we had done, the window is closed. We can't, there's no talking about that no more. It's done. Window's dead until January.
The window is dead, you're right. But that's not my job, mate. This is why Mikel Arteta gets paid however much he gets paid. This is why Arsenal have put a contract on the table for him to become the second highest paid Premier League manager in history. Right?
Inflation.
He
Inflation.
He
Inflation. Sorry, Brandon. Inflation, gal. Oh,
true.
fuck my boots. Bloody
He-
inflation.
he-
Sorry.
Sorry.
Back
He-
to
he-
you.
He's the one who has to find the solutions, right? Yeah. But I don't want any excuses from any Arsenal fans come the end of the season when, we haven't won anything or there's been mistakes or anything else and all the rest of it. And then all of a sudden everybody wants to revert back to the transfer window again, because I just, explained about the transfer window and Dale said, no. Look at the squad that we've got now. Cool. That's fine.
No, what I said again, you see,
Find solutions.
I said, look at the squad we have now, and what do they need to do? Listen, I'm not happy with the transfer window, but me harping on it and saying the transfer window, if we had done more, yes, if what, maybes, but we did not. My point is, this Arsenal squad as is, it's a different question entirely. I'm not saying, oh, they're good enough or they're not good enough. That's the thing is, what can you then now do with these players to make sure you go on to win something? Because if you don't win something, Igal, please, what is my stance on Arteta?
Brandon, simply put, you've identified a problem. What is your solution?
What is the solution now? The problem has happened.
Okay, so Deo, if you let me finish talking, bro, yeah, then maybe you'll understand what I'm saying, right? What I am saying now is, with the squad being the way that it is, I think we all agree it's a bit thin, etc., etc. It is now down to the manager to make sure that it is rotated correctly in the correct games, right? This isn't my job, that's his job. So now we're going to see how good Mikel Arteta is or isn't, right? And as you guys know, I've had my doubts about him anyway, right? So, but yeah, in terms of rotation, do we have to rotate? Of course we have to rotate. Tottenham away, Atlanta away, Man City away. You've got to rotate in them games. Which one do you rotate in? Probably the Champions League one. But my point being is, and the reason why I keep coming back to the transfer window is because this is phase 5 of the project. We was told all along that this project is a 5-phase project. We're in phase 5. The fact that we are sitting here saying we may have to rotate a 17-year-old kid into this Arsenal side in a Champions League game against an Atlanta side, by the way, people who everybody sits there and says, oh, yeah, I think we could still beat them with a heavily rotated side, forgets what they did to Liverpool in the Europa League last season. Yeah, this ain't going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. But what I'm trying to get at is I'm disappointed in the fact that we have reached this position now, phase 5, we was that close to beating Manchester City, and we're sitting here saying we might have to rotate a 17-year-old kid into the team in important games in the season.
Bro, it makes me laugh because he's talking about phase 5 like we're Fast and Furious. Every
Bro,
single
wait,
season,
what? Who added the 6th phase?
By the way, I still think with rotation we can beat Atlanta. The thing is, this is the problem, right? People, all right, cool. Atlanta done well last season. Cool. They've played 3 games in the league this season. They've lost their last 2 games. They're not playing that great this season in the Serie A. All right, cool. That might change by the time we play them. Fair enough. What I'm trying to say is, by the way, this is with the current circumstances. No Odegaard, no Calafiori, no Moreno. That's the reason why we'd have to rotate heavily, right? Because normally it'd still be rotating, but it wouldn't maybe feel the same way. But the way the Italian leagues play, I can see Nwaneri cooking them. I'm being honest. I'm not saying no. Honestly, I'm not saying it in a way of like. By the way, I'm not saying it because I highly rate Nwaneri. I generally do think Nwaneri this season is going to be a player that you don't look at and say he's 17 years old. He's going to look at like an Arsenal squad player, right? He's going to look better than when we were bringing on Reece Nelson. That's how I feel it will go this season. And by the way, 17 is what it is. He's young, but I've seen 17-year-olds cook for loads of other teams. I get that. That's the only thing I'll say about leaning away from the 17. Obviously, the experience side of it is the one thing where you could say in certain games. But once again, he's not a defensive player. So sometimes you can get away with that a little bit more than if it's like a 17-year-old DM or a 17-year-old centre-back, you know?
Yeah.
You know the good thing
On-
about the
on that-
Champions League game,
Hold
it
on.
gives Arteta another game to experiment before we play City, which is probably going to be our biggest game of the season so far.
I think what's been
On-
misconstrued when I asked, sorry,
Yeah. Final point because I want to move on
Yeah,
to the Arteta stuff.
no,
Go on.
I said I think what's been misconstrued is when I asked about rotation, it's more about the midfield. Generally speaking, everybody knows you have to rotate to compete in multiple competitions, right? In midfield, how much rotation can we really do now with the injuries? And this is where Brandon's whole point
Rice
about
is
the
going to
transfer
start the
window,
next game.
but this is where his whole point about the transfer window holds weight. And then when everybody talks about finding solutions, as fans, we're not here to put out tactical boards and do Arteta's job for us.
I mean, you're on a panel to talk about your opinions, and you don't want to give your opinion. It's a bit of an odd statement to have. Though.
But we are giving our opinion. We've had doubts about our numbers squad wise, and then now we're seeing it come into fruition. And now we're asking the questions again of the sporting director Edu and what he could have done to help us compete. Because when you look at City and their numbers in depth, we don't have the same squad.
In reality, we have two per position, but
We don't
let's
have
not
the
talk
same,
about that.
we don't have the same squad depth and quality as City, right? And
It doesn't
that
have
is-
to be the same quality.
Pardon?
That's a subjective term, though. That's not always going to be objective, though. We can argue whether we have the depth or whether we don't. Players can come in and do a job. That's what we've got in our depth.
But listen, we see other fans, right? We see, look, Terry's a United fan. He can talk about Scott McTominay and all these other players that he wanted out of the club because he didn't feel like they were good enough squad players to help them achieve the ambitions that they had as a club or to get to where they want to get to moving forward. So when you're talking about, it's all subjective. Of course, it's all subjective. We all have our own opinions. But at the end of the day, there's a certain level of quality that we all wanted,
Which we do have,
right? And that a lot of us still had doubts over.
But I think that's where the debate kind of ends in terms of what we can say. I think it's about proof in the pudding now, and I think we're gonna get a lot of those answers in the next 7 games. I want to do some of the super chat before we get onto Arteta. But the first one here says, fans like Brandon talk out of both sides. They say, "I told you so." Some same fans were complaining about youth integration. It's not your job to talk about the transfers either. You have a solution when it suits you.
Cool. You say what you like.
Joshua here says inflation. Igal was watching Trump versus Harris.
He's not wrong though.
Yeah, I mean it's right. It is. Yeah, I suppose it is right if you add in again. You add football inflation as well, not the inflation on the internet, like the actual, because football inflation is a lot higher as well. I saw something somewhere when we show the growth of money in football. If Rio Ferdinand was bought now for the same money, it would have been like a 220 million pound transfer, which is crazy. Arsenal fell off with players Saliba injured. I don't know what that means.
We fell off because we played Rob Holding. It's a completely different.
Right, yeah, there we go, got it. Call up Dalman to play Premier League footy and skip 10 years. I've heard, I did hear a few people on the show we did yesterday talking about this young. I didn't realize he's 14. Like 14's too far. 14, leave it out a little bit. Do you know what I mean? He should be playing Kiss Chase. What makes Ethan better than Emil Smith Rowe? It's pure copium from Arsenal, is what Blaze says here.
How old was Bukayo Saka when he broke into the Arsenal team?
He was about 18.
Good. How old was Emil Smith Rowe at the time as well? I don't remember. I know he was.
But he was on loan, so
he played under.
I don't know.
Wenger.
I know. Look. I don't care what. Listen, I don't care. I don't care what. What I'm saying. I'm even just talking age because we make it sound like 17, 18. There's some magical super difference between them. Like, let's be realistic here. We've had players who were in that same age range come in and do a business. I'm not saying Nwaneri is going to become the newest big thing, but to undercut the player when you haven't seen him play in the team, it just doesn't make any sense to me. That's all I'm saying. It's like,
yo, chill with the quad talk. I love it. Bro.
This is true. You are still on for the quad officially. The squad isn't thin; it lacks quality, is what
I
AO
disagree.
says
I don't think it lacks quality, and I don't think it's thin. I just think people have the solution. It's thin.
Don't care about injuries. We beat them Spurs, whether we don't have players. And Robbie is on the pitch. AMT here says, I want to see how Arteta and the players handle this adversity. Don't get reactionary. Amy White here says, I know Ange the flange is rubbing his hands, but I reckon we win regardless of injuries. Tottenham ain't are whack at the moment. Yeah,
It's
they're
gonna
win.
be
They're,
funny to hear the Spurs fans complain.
it's going to be an amazing. I can't wait. Most of these fans just never hold the board and ownership accountable. It's mad to me. Just unicorns, rainbows, and positivity. What needs to happen for you to see what is happening at our club?
How much
I
can we
don't
talk
hold
about
the
it before we
counties
just move on and
accountable
talk about,
for it.
okay, what are the solution rather than just keep harping on about the same shit? It
And
gets-
that's and
I
that's
think
the
the
thing.
Conkies were willing to spend money. We just didn't find the player we wanted to spend it on.
And these it's fans like this.
We clearly had money because we wanted Nico Williams.
Hold on. It's fans like this that do my head in. They say, "Oh, hold them accountable." Then when you ask them, they have an opinion about holding the club accountable. When you ask them, "What's your opinion on what can be done to hold the club accountable?" "Oh, it's not my job. They should do their job." I'm like, what are you saying then? What are you complaining about? If you have a complaint, genuine complaint, you want to hold someone accountable, you should be coming with facts to say, "Listen, this is what and what and what and what and what I think needs to be done." And if you're not going to do it, if you're not going to do it, then you know.
No, I hear
Exactly.
that. Just interest of time, guys. Sorry. Who do you credit? Sorry, who do you credit does Arsenal's uprising, and do you lot credit for Arsenal at winning anything, Brandon? So who do you credit for Arsenal going from being an 8th place team to being title contenders? I think is what Skit says here.
Mikel Arteta.
Well done. We went from 8th back to where Arsenal were finishing
No,
under.
we were top 4 though. We were a top 4 team, not a 2nd place competing for the league. Let's get it right.
We compete or not, Sulz. We haven't won anything, bro. That is the fact.
It's still progression.
Yeah, but his question is very simple. His question is, who do you credit? His question, Brandon. See, you can't just. You see, the thing is, if you turn around and say, we haven't won anything, you're not addressing the question. The question was not about. He says, who do you credit for the uprising, for Arsenal's uprising to where we are right now? And then the second part of the question is, who do you credit? Who do you credit for Arsenal not winning anything? So you can say, yes, Arteta is at fault. We haven't won anything. But to bring us to where we are, who do you credit that to?
Who do I credit that to? I credit that to the board, and the ownership, and the manager.
That's all the question is.
Yeah, regardless of how people feel about Mikel Arteta and how good or how not so good they think he is, right? He still has spent £750 million. So at the end of the day, Arsenal should be fucking competing for a title having spent that sort of money. You know, regardless.
They are. So what should we do?
Guys, I know it's a good conversation, but I want to get this last point out here. I think we've sort of segued in perfectly with that super chat. If Mikel Arteta doesn't win a trophy this season, Igal, should he be sacked as the Arsenal manager?
Context. If we fall off a cliff and the team is an absolute disaster, then yes. But if we're relatively close and things are still headed in the right direction, I'm not willing to sack Arteta.
At what point, Igal, of not winning trophies do you think is enough? Even with context, even with pushing.
I think if Liverpool were to beat us to the league, it would be something more where you'd have to look at yourself a little bit different. Where if Man City went on to go win it again and it was close margins once again, you could relatively understand that, as they've now won it 4 years in a row. Where if Slot came in and won it his first year, it's a different story. So that's one metric. Another metric, Terry, if we don't win anything in any cup competition and we also get knocked out of the Champions League once again in the early stages or like round of 16, and also drop out of the title race completely and finish like 3rd or 4th, that is another metric where you have to look at the manager and what went wrong. But just a blanket statement, if we don't win anything, I need to know what the context is next to it. And that's why I'm putting certain parameters in place to say that is where I would look at the manager and say, you got to go or you got to leave. But if things are still relatively good, but we just don't necessarily get over the line, would I really want to sack Arteta in a summer where Pep's leaving and all these other things could potentially be happening? I don't think so. I wouldn't rock the boat. I would keep it the same.
Giuseppe, how about yourself? Do you agree with Igal that context is key, or has it got to a stage now, again, especially for someone that believes in Arteta, believes in the squad, believes in the team, has it got to a point where trophies, and I'm talking Carabao Cups, FA Cups as well, is it about time they start coming in now and that CV starts to get filled with trophies?
Yeah, I'm partially with Igal. I think context is definitely key. Anyone other than City winning the league would obviously change it completely, because that would mean someone's actually overtaken us now, rather than City just still being ahead of us. So that would completely change things. I think if we didn't win anything this season and we brought it to the last game and stuff, maybe you could. I could open my ears to who's available and who would be coming in. There ain't no sacking Arteta without having the guy coming in. That's the one thing that I won't be in for. I wouldn't be sacking Arteta and then who can we get now? It'd have to be, we know we could get, I don't know, Ancelotti or Zidane, or even though I don't actually I don't think Zidane is as good as certain people make out, but that's another conversation for another day. I don't think Zidane as a manager I think he's a bit overrated.
Okay, sorry. I thought you meant as a player for a second. I was
no,
no.
As a manager.
Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
So I'd open my ears for that. Who is coming in if we sack him? I ain't here to sack him to bring in De Zerbi or some sort of manager like this, or Southgate, or there's no chance in hell I'd do that even. Do you know what I mean? So for me, context is key. Because I am still a firm believer by I believe Arsenal will win the league. I still do, but I don't think there's anyone has divine right to beat this Man City team and Pep Guardiola to the league, because I still think they're superior to us. So once again, I think we're going to win the league, but there ain't no divine right. So if we go to the end, I'll have to see. I have to see how I feel at the end of the season, if I'm being honest. Maybe at the end of the season, winning nothing, because that is another thing. It would also be that we ain't won the cups. That would piss me off.
You know,
I do hold the book. Sorry, Agal. I do also say that if we don't do it, I'd go for Edu's head before Arteta's. Me personally, because I think that they have, as Brandon said, let him down this season in the transfer window. Where if he'd got what he wanted, maybe it would be a different story. That's another reason why I'm a bit on the fence. Would be on the fence with sacking him if we don't win anything.
But Giuseppe, I'm just going to double down quickly. I think people who want Arteta sacked at this point are enemies of progress, genuinely. Because if you want the manager sacked at this point, and you've seen the progress that we've made as a team, and you look around at other club situations, and you say to yourself, you don't want that level of stability. You don't see Arteta building the team. You don't see him improving. You don't see the team improving constantly, and you don't attribute that to the manager. I don't know what to say to you, because I think if Arteta was to be sacked today from Arsenal, there's going to be a queue of clubs coming in, be it Man City, be it PSG, be it Barcelona, be it Bayern Munich. All these clubs would want Mikel Arteta as their next manager if he was to leave Arsenal today.
Can I ask you a question? You a quick question?
Yeah.
Going based off last season, what can he do to improve?
What can he do?
What can he do to improve from last season?
Now that he has a little bit more squad depth, he can manage players' injuries a little bit better, hopefully, like the likes of Thomas Partey and Jorginho and some of those guys. Also, he can try to get a little bit more out of Martinelli. Now that you have more attacking players, you have more pressure on Bukayo Saka to continue to perform, especially with the rotation with Raheem Sterling available. We don't have to depend on him playing week in, week out. And with more games, we do have cover in majority of places. If we need a cover for Ben White, we have multiple players that can come in for him. We need cover for Saliba, we have multiple center backs that can play there. In the whole back line, we have multiple defenders that can rotate. Rotation is also going to be key. And final thing, I think Mikel Arteta has made tactical tweaks that we haven't really spoken about. He has Bukayo Saka now playing a little bit more as a touchline winger and crossing the ball in behind a lot more than cutting inside and being an inside forward, as he has been for majority of his last 2 seasons. So tactical tweaks also that he can make on the pitch to change how we play, and those little tweaks could also further our progression.
Wallahi, that wasn't the question. I can't lie. I was letting you land. What can he do from last season in this season to improve further? Because you guys are saying that he's gonna improve. He's gonna improve. Okay. I went up. No, improvement or progressing. Yeah, and improving and progressing is you moving your position closer to the league, Okay. Now we've gotten to 1 point away from Man City, and we got to the quarterfinals of the UCL. What can he do to progress you guys further for you guys to give him the context to stay? I think I can say this for once. If he doesn't win a trophy this season, for me, or he doesn't win any trophies this season, then questions are on his head, bro. Questions on his head.
I agree. I agree. But hold on, one second.
Go on.
But I get what you're saying again, Saad, and I agree to an extent. But when you say progression it's not only league position technically that you could
It's
argue that
less
with. If City get 100 points again and we get 99 points, that is still progression. We haven't won, but we've still done a lot better in the league than we did last year. So, but I do get what you're saying. With, of course, if we don't win anything this year, I agree 100%. There's questions for everyone at Arsenal, the players included.
I think we could improve on our defensive record. I think we can improve our midfield performances from last year and holding on to possession a lot.
Yeah, but Gabba, what you're doing is
Those kind of
you're kind of talking about outcomes, right? What does Arteta have to do to improve those things? What are the actions that improve your defense? What does he have to change to make that defense stronger? I suppose is the question.
I think he's already done that by making a signing like Calafiori, a left-sided player that can improve our left side, as Zinchenko was a liability defensively last season. Also bringing in Mikel Moreno, who's a left-sided 8, who's left-footed, also brings more natural, someone natural to play in that position that can bring more balance to the team. And with that, you'd also hope they would bring more quality. It would bring more out of that whole left-handed side. Because let's be honest, last season a lot of our progress in our attack came, and our build-up came from that right-hand side, be it Ben White, Odegaard, and Saka. So now I'm hopeful that left-hand side can improve from the signings we've made.
Brandon, there's a question here I want to pose to you, because I know you disagree with what they're saying, but I want to go to the super chat. It says Pep's record is in his 14 seasons is 11 league titles, 3 years where he hasn't won it. Lost the last Barca season after a three-peat, lost the first City season, and then to Klopp's team. It says pandemic, but Liverpool won it before the pandemic kicked in, to be fair. Perspective. Going toe-to-toe with Pep is no small achievement. When you look at Pep's record, that essentially has only lost out on 3 titles that he's ever been challenging for, can you treat Arteta with the same standards you would if there was no Pep Guardiola in the Premier League, in your personal opinion?
Why can't you? Everybody's saying he's this generational manager. Everybody's saying he's the next best thing. You know, at the end of the day, let's bring it back to the early 2000s, yeah? Man United, one of the richest clubs, the richest club in world football at the time, with arguably the best manager that the Premier League's ever seen in Alex Ferguson. That did not stop Arsene Wenger, who spent less money, from nicking league titles from Alex Ferguson. So don't give me all this, Arteta, Pep, and it's no small feat going up against it. You know, it didn't stop Arsene Wenger from nicking titles off Fergie. So why should it stop this great generational young manager that we have in Mikel Arteta from beating Pep? You know,
fair point.
But would you not argue that Pep's record? No, not even Pep. Hold on, Pep's record is probably better than what Sir Alex is. Sir Alex has been picked.
No.
In terms of like consecutive, in terms of league
Pep's only lost the league twice.
If we're talking, look, the stat that just went down is he's only lost 3, right? In the last, 14
seasons.
The last 14 seasons,
right? So if we're looking at no one in world football that we know of has done that, has got that type of record. Even Sir Alex Ferguson, as great as Sir Alex was, never had that level of a record where he only lost 3 out of 14. So when you're comparing Sir Alex, his record is a level above at the moment. I'm not saying he's a better manager. That's a whole discussion for another day. But what I'm arguing is his record is still a level above Sir Alex's. So even that comparison doesn't hold weight because he's done better.
Okay, let this hold weight then. Klopp, yeah? Klopp spent less money at Liverpool. He was nicking players from Southampton. He was, he brought in Mo Salah, who at the time everybody was like, he flopped at Chelsea. You know, he's done all right at Roma, but he flopped at Chelsea. He's not going to achieve nothing. Klopp arguably turned Salah into the player that he is now, who we all agree is world class, right? So that just shows how important managers are at football teams as well, because Klopp nicked a fucking league title off of Pep. You know, Klopp's one of the managers who nicked a league title off Pep. So if Arteta is that great, guys, then he should be nicking league titles off Pep. I'm not saying.
Do you put context around these things at all?
Let me finish my point, please. Yeah.
Okay, go on.
So if Arteta is that great, he should be nicking league titles off of Pep, right? Not saying win it consistently year in, year out, because obviously that is a difficult achievement, as that super chat just said. But he has lost 3 league titles before to other managers. So if Arteta's that great, he should be nicking league titles. Now, this is right. Having listened to you guys, when Terry posed the question, would you sack Arteta if he didn't win anything this season? Right? This is where I have the problem. Again, you say that you believe so heavily in Arsenal and Arteta, right? But you're not willing to pin everything on Arsenal winning the league title. And the reason why I know that is because you also said context. Well, what context? When is it that Arsenal have to start winning trophies? When is it that this manager has to start winning trophies? Why? What is it with the progress? When is it going to be, okay, no more seasons of progress, time to start winning trophies, which is what football is all about at the end of the day, winning trophies.
The answer is when it's the end of the line,
there's an excuse.
I don't think it's the end of the line yet.
I guarantee you, at the end of this season, at the end of the season, if Arsenal don't win anything, I guarantee you all come out crying, talking about the transfer.
If Arsenal don't win anything, we lose to Man City once again, and they let Pep leave, and then we sack Arteta, and Arteta goes to Man City and starts winning another 5 leagues in a row with Man City, we're gonna look like fucking dickheads.
Maybe,
but that, let me just jump in for a second. But that's where context. I think context applies on both ends of this spectrum. So again, I'm being in the middle here. I think what Brandon has said holds water. I think there comes a point where you have to look at no trophies and just saying progression and say, well, when does progression not become enough? I think that is a very fair question to ask, because it isn't just the Premier League. Ten Hag has won 2 trophies in the last couple of seasons with a team that isn't as good as Arsenal. So I definitely think that question comes in. Where I agree with elements of what you said there, Gal, and this is where I think the conversation is so polarized. Some people that back Arteta, they don't want a bad word being said against him, and there are others that don't rate him at all, so they almost want him as gone as soon as possible. But there is an element of context that's needed, and I don't even know if it's about results. It has to be for a manager that the club feels is sure can take you that one step further. So it can't just be, do you know what? Let's have a punt on De Zerbi. I think, for instance, say you don't win anything this year, and Alonso does back-to-back Bundesligas as a really good Champions League run, again, as an example. You could look at a manager like that if he does back-to-back, you could argue has removed that stranglehold from Bayern Munich. He had an invincible season. He's progressed in Europe. You could look at that and say, do you know what? It is a calculated gamble to say, thank you, Arteta. You've got us literally to the door. We just can't cross the threshold. This manager is a winner. Bringing him in. Now, there's a risk, and I think most Arsenal fans, I think it was Connor, the Arsenal fan, that came on the terrace, and he probably gave the best answer to this I've heard from an honesty perspective, and it was, I think he said now we'd get rid of him. It may be next season. He went, I'm totally aware that we could go backwards with another manager, but I'm prepared to take the risk. And I think that's what it really comes down to, because if we're being honest, if you don't rate Arteta, of course you're willing to take the risk because you don't believe in Arteta. If you think Arteta is the man and going to become a great manager, I also get why you don't want to take the risk, because you believe in that person. And I think that's where some Arsenal fans end up going around in circles with their debate, is that if you believe he's going to be a great manager, of course you're going to give him time. You're going to be like, what's his name? What was the name of Fishburne's character in Morpheus? You're basically like Morpheus, and you're looking at Neo and you're like, I know he's the one. I know he can't see it right now. He's falling off buildings, but I know he's the one. I also get it from a perspective like you, Brandon. You don't think Arteta's that guy. So, but I think the answer actually is somewhere nearer the middle, which is there has to be a point. There has to be a point where not winning is too much, even if you're still a highly competitive team. Because at the end of the day, once you're challenging for the titles and you're right on the edge, you're basically good enough to win them. It's about how you manage a team over the line. So I think there has to be a happy medium here.
I'm just going to have to jump off, but I'm going to say this, Terry. I don't think it's a healthy conversation to constantly have a conversation about sacking a manager who's been in the title race for the last 2 seasons continuously in the 3rd game of the season. I know it's a topic that we need to discuss at times, but off the back of the first 3 games of the season going into one of our biggest games, I'm still surprised that this is one of the main discussion points, as Mikel Arteta's job is not been any more secure at this point. He's still under contract, and if we were to ever let him go, I think there would need to be a catastrophic collapse. That's all I'm saying.
You know what it is, Miguel, as well? It's not black and white. Like, I find it very interesting that a lot of people in life try to look at things as so black and white on the internet. But life is not black and white. Someone commits a crime. They don't just go, you've done this crime, you face this punishment. There's context looked into it. So when you criticize a gal for bringing in context into it, it's like that's not applied in any walk of life. At work, relationships, not everything is you do this is the consequence. That's not how life works. So
by the way, to the chat, I'm not running. I'm going to be here tomorrow, Terry, for the top 6. So
bro. I know you're not running. Nath, I agree with you as well. And this is
the totality.
I do agree with you. But I think it works with both sides of the conversation. And the only thing I disagree with Gal on wholeheartedly is I don't think it's not unhealthy for a podcast like this, because it's Arsenal based. It's looking at the wider spectrum of things. But I do think context is key. And even like a lot of people that want him gone, like when I see them ask the question, who would you bring in? You do see a lot of names that are almost unattainable. They say Diego Simeone, they say Zidane. Those managers have either gone on record or it's quite obvious they don't want to leave where they are and they don't want to be in England. And the problem then is when you look, again, you're not taking away from Real Madrid. I don't care how much money you've got. He's in that situation. So I think you've also got to be realistic about who you can potentially bring in. Bran, can I just do a couple of these super chats? I don't want to run out of time before these go up. First one says Arteta has been coaching a club for 5 years so far. Comparing Wenger and Klopp is disrespectful to the latter.
How?
When AMT, but this is a great question for you then, AMT. When does it stop becoming disrespectful? After 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years? There must be a cutoff. And I think that's a genuine question. I'm just intrigued to answer it from that side. If Arteta can't get the job done, find the manager who can. Ten Hag has done it in less time, winning trophies. Is what Mark Smith says here. This comment here says, Gal, how do you still say context for Arteta? You, Terry, I mean, literally have a Real Madrid fan on your channel. Look at the difference of his mentality. Look, what I'm going to say about this, I keep saying this to Gooners, and some Arsenal fans take it as an offense. I understand having the aspirations to be Real Madrid. Why would you not? But you can't go around behaving like Real Madrid until you are Real Madrid. If you want to be a billionaire, you can't go around acting and spending like a billionaire until you get there. I think it's a step change. I've always believed that. So having aspirations and how you treat circumstances now are very, very different. So I think you can aspire to get somewhere. You can put all the right stepping stones in place, but you can't have the attitude of Real Madrid right now because you're not Real Madrid. You can't do what Real Madrid do.
I agree with that, but you're never going to get to be in Real Madrid when you've got fans constantly saying, progress this season, progress this season. Doesn't matter about trophies, doesn't matter about all of that, as long as we keep progressing, you know. But the thing is as well,
I get that as well. I do get that.
We're never going to be Real Madrid anyway, because Arsenal, as a football club, don't have the ambition to be a Real Madrid. We showed that in this transfer window this summer. Because at the end of the day, we were desperate to win. We wouldn't have gone out and spent £20 million.
Can I ask a question though? Can I ask a question on that? A question that's intrigued me as a. I know I get called an Arsenal fan. All the Arsenal fans I see online angry that you don't have the ambition to be Real Madrid. Your club has never done that. Your club's never behaved like Real Madrid in 100+ years. Why do you support a club that doesn't? Why did you pick a club that doesn't fulfill your standards? Why did you fall in love with them in the first place? And can't you recapture that same love that wasn't Real Madrid?
I could, but at the time, obviously when I started supporting Arsenal, we was winning things. We was winning league titles. We was competing in multiple competitions. We was winning FA Cups. We was nicking league titles off of Manchester United, who at the time were the Man City of that generation, right? So, and it's not just about that as well. It's about the football that we play, the players as well, that you fall in love with certain players, and etc. etc. I don't recognised this Arsenal since the Kroenke ownership has come in, and we can point to what's happened previously. The Kroenkes were very, very happy with Arsene Wenger continuously getting Arsenal in the top 4, no matter what, right? Because they use the excuse
That's false, but okay.
It's so false. The narrative is just so false. But continue.
They use the excuse of, we've got to pay the stadium off. We continually sold our best players.
It's not even about the stadium, but okay.
Come on, let me finish my point. We continually sold our best players. All of a sudden, the only time the question marks from the owners, not the fans, from the owners, started to come in with Arsene Wenger was when he stopped finishing in the top 4. Right now, we've got Mikel Arteta, who's from 8th, back into the top 4. Right, finishing 2nd and finishing 3rd or 4th is absolutely no difference whatsoever because we still haven't won anything. Right, they are happy receiving that Champions League check, and that is it. And they've demonstrated that in this transfer window because if we was that desperate, to go and win,
understand that.
We spent a lot more money in this window.
I do understand that, and I just see it as a United fan. I've got friends who are United fans who claim to be, who hate how he used to play football under Fergie, as an example. I didn't like how he played under Fergie. I want to play more like this. And I sometimes sit there and think, well, what attracted you to the club then? It's a genuine question. Like, what attracted you to the club? Because I get your point that you want more ambitious owners, but you fell in love with a club that's never been Real Madrid. And do you know what? I think even if you behave like them, the likelihood of anybody else getting to Real Madrid's level is hard because I don't know if there's enough football players in the world for there to be 2 or 3 or 4 Real Madrids. And I had this conversation before many times on the show. If every single club in the world acted like Real Madrid, do you know that there would still be a team that finishes 20th in the Premier League that season? I just think in terms of it, just be Real Madrid. And I'm not saying you're saying this, Brandon. I'm talking generally. This kind of act like Madrid. I almost feel like not everybody, no matter how hard you work, could be built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think you could go to the gym every day, take the steroids, eat the food. Some people are never going to look like that. And I just think that there's got to be a realization of that as well to a certain degree.
So much that act like Madrid, it's just don't go 20 years without winning a league title. You're a big club.
No, that bang on.
You shouldn't go 4 years without winning a single trophy when you've spent the money that you've spent. That's my thing. Like Arsenal have to start winning trophies now.
I agree with that point totally, and I think that's the balance in this. And I'm just kind of putting it out there for your opinion because some of it's crazy. Brandon speaking the truth. We're not moving like the Gunners. We're moving like the Pistons. And I agree. Do you know what it is? I used to understand from Arsenal fans that we're not behaving how we used to behave as Arsenal. What I don't get is I don't love Arsenal anymore because they're not behaving like Real Madrid. It just doesn't quite make sense to me. But again, I also get, by the way,
I don't love my bird because she was she was a 7 when I had her, and she's not a 10 now. So that's the equivalent.
Yeah. She's got back to looking how she was.
Yeah,
but she's not better than she used to be. But equally, though, what I will say is people do change, and I wonder if it wasn't so taboo for people to change football clubs. I wonder how many people would do it more regularly. Genuine question. I think if it wasn't so taboo, I think a lot of people would go, do you know what? I reckon, and not older fan. I don't think the older generation would do it. I think people say 30 years old and younger. I reckon if it suddenly was erased and nobody would say it's weird to change teams, I reckon you would get people change it. I reckon you'd get 60% of modern day football fans would change every 2 or 3 years. I think they would chop and change based on and again, it would always be to the teams winning as an example. When I became a Man United fan in the late 80s, my dad laughed at me.
I think it'd be like the fight game. Like boxing, UFC, like the way there's no real alliance. You just pick your favorite.
You pick your favorite fighter at that time. Yeah. No, that's probably right, to be fair. I feel I fell in love with Chelsea's mentality, squad of men, captains, leaders. Stamford Bridge was a fortress. Now we've got an orphanage. And I also, again, and this is why I throw the conversation out there because I want to get answers back. That's why Chelsea fans that are in their the mid-20s and Chelsea fans that are in their mid-50s will view Chelsea very differently, because the younger generation don't remember the Chelsea that came beforehand. And I think all of that matters. That's the one thing I'd say is the 20-year-old Arsenal fans who have never seen success. Why are you talking about Madrid? What did you pick in the first place? I don't understand. Like, do you get where I'm coming from? They're the ones that really, the young ones confuse me. I can kind of understand a 45-year-old gooner that fell in love with a very attractive, very well-playing football club, very well-run football club, becoming disillusioned and saying, I want us to behave better. What I don't get is someone who's 18 that picked them when he was like 8 or 9, when you weren't very good, saying, why aren't we like Real Madrid? My first question is, where was your dad? Where was your dad, right? To give you some guidance at that young age. I don't know. This here says, totally off topic. Thank you for your video about your health recently, struggling for a while now, and coming out has made me talk more. Kieran, look, I appreciate that, mate. And listen, everyone handles mental health issues in a different way. Do you know what's really crazy and what's helped me? And go and get advice, go and speak to people. I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming to be. All my life, right? I've heard they say to men, talk about your problems. Talk about your problems. My biggest issue is I carried on talking about them. And every time I spoke about it, it would trigger it off. I saw a psychiatrist who just said, try not talking about it. They gave me this technique to write these things down. When stop doing everything, just ignore it and see if it goes away. Kind of did. Randomly, not speaking about it, start triggering me. So listen, I'm not giving that advice out. I'm saying speak to people and ask, because all things work for different people, but big up yourself. I get the negativity around Arsenal right now, but I can't be negative about it all the time. Being a fan is supposed to be fun at the end of the day. Yeah, I think you got to agree with that. I almost feel like if watching football makes you angry all the time, I would suggest finding a different sport. Just put it out there. Brandon is such a liar. Brandon's not a liar. Come on now. How old are you? I can bet you've only seen Arsenal win the league twice. Standard FC with an agenda. It's 28. So you would have seen it one. So you're born in 1996. 96. So you wouldn't remember 98. So you probably remember it twice. You might have remembered it. Yeah. Yeah, well, listen, it's fair. No, listen, I don't think Brandon's a lie. I'm going to back Brandon on that. I think a lot of what Brandon says makes sense. What is the best part of being a fan? The journey or the achievement? Arteta quote. What do you say? What do you say to that, Dio? Is it the achievement or is it the journey for you?
It's both. I think it's both. I think the achievement is for bragging rights, because you don't want other rivals saying, "Oh, you haven't won anything." You know, like that's the only thing with the trophies for me. I'm serious. Like when people say that, that's what it's like. That's the only thing you can say. But the journey, watching your team go, I saw Arsenal win in 98, 97, 98, 2004. I've been to Highbury, like for me, I saw the decline. And so us coming out of it now, that's why I see it differently, because I saw the decline. I saw the good Arsenal and I saw it go down in the dumps. And for me to see where we're coming from now and how we're behaving, this was part of when Wenger was bringing the likes of Bergkamp and he was bringing Henry to the team. Back then, people were like, where is he getting these players from? What is he doing? What is he building? Where are we going with this? And then boom, it kicked off. I know for a fact that this team is going to kick off eventually, right? And that same Wenger took us on a good ride, and then he took us down as well.
I'd love to know how. Sorry, Dyer. I'd love to know how Arsenal fans would feel right now if social media didn't exist.
Exactly, and for me, like just seeing.
Thank God it does, eh?
Like seeing us rebuild the entire, seeing us rebuild the entire thing, which is even the way the club is run. And I beg to differ about the Cronkies, right? Ownership is something that I do a lot of research in. The Cronkies own franchises here in America. And I'll tell you this about their franchises. Every franchise that they've taken over, every single franchise the Cronkies own in America has won a trophy. They built their schedule, they worked on it, and they won with those teams. And some of those teams are teams that had been written off for years before they came on board, right? So, if that's how their model is with what they own here, I want to believe that they have the same kind of drive. Now, are we patient enough as Arsenal? No, we're not. But I, as a fan who grew up watching them, I'm happy that we're getting somewhere now. And eventually we're going to win.
Do you know what's really interesting about it? I think both are really important. But it was really interesting watching the Olympics, where you've got the best of the best athletes in the world. And when any of them won medals or won gold medals, you sort of, and there's a difference because these individuals train in a very unique way so they peak for 4 years' time. It's not like football or boxing where you're trying to peak in boxing every 3 or 4 months or whatever else. But all I ever heard them speak about the whole Olympics was my journey, what it took to get here, what it took to, what I had to sacrifice. And I think ignoring the journey is absolutely, it shows me you've never played sport to a decent level. Personally, someone who did. And even when it comes to personal achievements, we hit 400K the other day, and it was like, you sit there and reflect, and bloody, I remember doing those streams at stupid o'clock in the morning in front of 30 people. So the achievement is great because I hit 400K. But the reason it feels so good is I remember all those days where it was killing me. I was working a full-time job and doing this almost full-time and streaming to nobody and no one cared. Still, some people don't. But you know what I mean? It was, so the journey is, I think, to ignore, and there is no one that's successful who doesn't talk about their journey and how important it is. But what I do get, though, from Arsenal's detractors, and people often say I'm not balanced on this, but I don't think it's the case. I understand if you don't believe in the journey. So if you don't believe Arteta and the Cronkies are going to get you to the promised land, I kind of understand why you don't want to hear about the journey either, because you don't, I'm going to say it, you don't trust the process. So I think that's the issue with a lot of these debates, having been involved in so many, is that often it's two people sort of angry about the way they view things, just not listening to each other and acting like the other one is crazy because you're not inside someone's head sometimes.
It's not even about that as such. I think, like, you're right, the journey is important, but how long is this fucking journey? Every year, it's like, progress, journey.
I do hear you. Listen, it's one of those weird things. Listen, I hope Man United get back to the top one day. This last 11 years, I'm really intrigued to see. Say we get another really good period where we win 3 Prems in 6 years, say. I wonder how those Prems will feel winning them, to me, compared to when we were dominating. I don't know the answer. And the reason why I say this is that this is what I mean by journey. Real Madrid fans just keep bloody winning all the time. But I'd love to speak to some that remember when they went that long period without winning a Champions League. I'd love to ask the ones that are old enough, when you started winning them again, did that feel different to when you were always winning them before? Was there almost an element of, it's another one, versus, thank God we've got another one? I'd love to understand. And again, depends on your age. If you're a 20-year-old Madrid fan, you can't answer that question. You haven't lived long enough. There are a lot of old head United fans that I know who sort of said when they won that Premier League in 1993, that they remember us winning in the 60s. But they said that Premier League win in 93 meant more than the treble for 6 years later. Because they said it ended that 27 years of craziness. And they went through that period of Fergie where it was up and down, should he stay or go? And they said that when they won that, it was the sense of happiness they felt on that day in May 1993 was the best experience they had. Now, I can't appreciate that. I don't remember the 60s, the 70s, and most of the 80s. So that's what I think is interesting about the journey. I think it's a very personal conversation as well.
I think, to put it simply, I think if you look at Leicester and their journey to winning the Premier League and how they were almost relegated, you can kind of look from the outside in and appreciate how that would have felt for their fans, because that is going from one end of the spectrum, to the other. And I think for you to kind of, shit on the journey is, that's we live game by game until we get to a final or we get to the last weeks of a season. We enjoy it all the way up into it, and then it's either heartbreak or celebration. And if you're lucky enough to experience celebration, then you kind of look back and relish how you got there. But obviously,
I get that.
And for the players as well, they put in all that hard work to lose the league by 2 points for the players themselves. So that journey for them, all that work that they put in, they turn around and they're like, we just one game.
And sometimes the journey doesn't have, and sometimes the journey doesn't have
a happy ending.
Doesn't have the happy ending, and you start again. And this is kind of it. Like if Brandon, if you get what you want, that's kind of the Cronky's gone. You could find you have to start again as a football club. Maybe the new owners and the new director of football go, we want to play a certain way. This squad ain't ready, so boom, it's another 2 or 3 years of gutting and starting. But this is what's interesting. What you would see, say you believed in that new project, believed in the new owners, loved how you were playing football and thought the manager was great. You might start to be the same people that you currently look at who love Arteta because you believe in something. And I think that's what's kind of lost in a lot of these conversations sometimes. This super chat here says 3 of your starting mids being out is not an issue. Depth. Any club, even City, would struggle, especially with 2 games coming up. Bang on about the standards and mentality, but you fold at game week 3. Hypocrisy.
It's bullshit. They have Rodri out, Foden out, Gundogan hasn't played a game.
But it's not bullshit though. It's not bullshit though. Last season when Rodri was out, didn't they lose 3 games back to back? When they had hold on, last season when they had Rodri out, Rodri only. Answer this question: did they not draw 2 games and lose a game back to back?
Okay. That's last season. This season, Rodri hasn't played a game. Foden is better. Foden hasn't played. Gundogan barely played.
I hear you on that, but if we're looking,
so I'm just saying to you, they've gone on. This is who we're competing.
So they're fine. Right? So what they're doing is they're finding a way to win without having those players, which is what we need to do. So exactly what you're saying is the bottom line is City is finding a way to win without Rodri, Gundogan, and Foden in the team. That's what City is doing with the squad that they have. Yeah. When they lost Rodri last year, guess what happened? They lost Rodri. Yeah. They drew 2 games and they lost 1. We now have lost 3 midfielders. We then have to find a way to win. We need to that's what this is about.
On that note, listen, great. Sorry,
that wasn't the question, though. I'm saying, but that wasn't the question. The question was what he'd asked was how would City cope? This season, we've seen them lose 3 players in central midfield, and they've coped. Right. So what you're saying is about what you're doing is you're changing the structure of the argument. You're talking about solutions. I'm saying to you on the pitch, they have shown that they have enough squad depth and quality to be able to deal with 3 major players not playing in central midfield.
But we haven't played with these 3 players that we're just about to do it on Sunday. So let's let the game happen. Let's see what happens with the game. Then we can turn around and criticize whether we're able to do it or not.
Yeah. And guys, listen, it's been a great debate, great challenge from all sides. I hope the viewers have enjoyed it. I think both sides of all the arguments have made some really good points. Viewers, it's about your comments, though. It's about you. I know a lot of you were watching the live chat, but come back and leave us your comments after the show once it kind of re-uploads itself. Would love to hear from you. More of these heated shows coming with Chelsea, Liverpool, City still to be done in the coming days, weeks, and over the course of the season. We're back tomorrow with a number of shows, including the top 6, as we finally start to get back to football. This video is going to take you through to Don Hassam's channel for, what's the show called? I don't want to butcher the name. Alahwa. There we go. I don't know. Yeah. See, I butchered it, right? I'm not going to try. Listen. Until next time, everybody, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And we will see you all again very, very soon. Peace.